Cool.
I'll try to do it. Okay, are you,
So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started, and if you could do a roll call, please.
okay, let's see. Samantha Cook.
Present.
Tim Silverman.
Present.
Martha Gerdes.
Present.
Todd Collins.
Present.
Allison Schwabe.
Present.
Schwab. Schwab. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm reading. Schwab. Thank you. I knew that. Tanya Rauch Williams is gone, and Jill Engel Cox. So you have 5 members present and 2 absent, so you have a quorum.
Great. And then typically you had mentioned the sustainability pledges. Would you like me to read the mission? We're good?
Yes.
Very good. All right. First item would be approval of the agenda, and I'm going to bring up some changes that we'd like to make in the spirit of a couple of items. One is Allison will need to recuse herself for the community solar gardens component of it. So we'd like to move that to the back so that we can complete, so where current business is currently, move the solar gardens down to there, move the current business up to B. And we're going to largely, well, we'd like to eliminate the citywide recycling ordinance agenda item for this evening so we can spend more time on the solar gardens, because we had some updates from City Council from last night. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Move to approve those changes.
Excellent.
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and then we have, next on our agenda item is approval of the minutes from June 22nd, 2022. Do we have a motion? Are there any changes?
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I'm going to open it now for public comment, and I believe we have one gentleman that'd like to make some public comment. Mr. Jacobs.
Hi, everyone.
Do we want him to have a mic?
Yeah. If you want to come up and sit. Oh, good. No. It'll be in the recording.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I haven't made public comment in this room since last night, when the mayor had a chance to hear me rant and so forth for 2 minutes. And if any of that escaped her, I'm going to repeat some of the same things I talked about. Mainly the EV plan, which I'm here to listen to, and the solar garden conversation. That's the one that you're going to discuss tonight. But I want to talk about those 2 projects and perhaps have a bit of conversation as your time allows here in the context of 2 overarching issues that I hope that you'll be thinking about. And I'm thrilled that the mayor's here because in some ways they're directed as much at council as at the board. And those 2 overarching issues are data and resources. So let me start with the EV plan and mention there that that the data analysis in terms of the inventory and the decision matrix that are in that plan, even though I was pleased to see that the plan was adopted, are still weak, and it's a weakness of not necessarily everybody on this board, because I know I have there's some real geeks here. I'm looking at one of them. But it's not the way the group that put that thing together.
Oh, sorry, your time's up, Mr. Jacobs. I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm totally messing with you, Ken.
Yeah, we did that last night, except that they had cards warning me.
Thanks for
Now,
playing.
before I continue to ramble on, can I spend 10 minutes in general conversation here? Is that reasonable?
Let's try to keep it concise so we
Okay,
can move
okay.
on.
If you look at the appendices to that plan, I'll be blunt, they kind of stink. They have headers like, fuel, 40. It doesn't say 40 gallons, it doesn't say $40, it says 40. If you can't get stuff like that right, then why bother? But, and there are other examples of that in there. So yes, it's important if we're going to be using these as the basis for making decisions, then let's do it right. Don Cameron, though, on council last night, had a good point, and that is maybe we don't have to. So I don't have a way to reconcile these two. But the city's policy says EV first. We don't have to pick every darn vehicle replacement apart. The assumption should be that we're going to buy an EV. And if we have an analysis that shows we still need a conventional vehicle, then get one. But the burden of proof now is on that side of the ledger. I'm not sure that that team or Jeff Hansen, city finance manager, necessarily buys into that yet, but it is what the ordinance said, and we were reminded of that by at least one council person last night. Now, sometimes the analysis is pretty clear, as there's no such thing as a medium-duty EV truck at this point, or whatever. But soon enough, there will be. Or the cost may be so exorbitantly different that it's pretty obvious still, because they're very much in the R&D mode. But particularly with the big things, police vehicles and pickup trucks, you're very close to having those be just, yeah, you're going to do some demos now, and then go out and just have that be the standard. I think that's what the policy says. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about resources. And I'm a bit
Resources related to EV.
resources relating to sustainability staff or sustainability related.
So that would be the third topic, because you mentioned EV, solar, and resources now, right? Correct, just want to make sure.
Well, I'm using the solar garden and
Resources.
the
combined.
EV with resources and data as an overlay to think about those two. So sort of a matrix.
Got it.
The board last year spent some time, including a meeting with Carly, to talk about doing a resource assessment because our staff wasn't adequate. There just wasn't enough horsepower. I don't know if horsepower is a sustainability term or not. To
If you're referring to horses, maybe.
do to drive all of the projects you've got going. And I still think that's true. Teresa told me earlier in the week she thought more likely resource cuts were in the offing, not necessarily to this department, but citywide. Jeff Hansen gave a fairly glowing report last night on city finances, so I'm not sure I quite put that together. Obviously, there are some new revenue sources that have some earmarks in them associated with lodging and marijuana. But nevertheless, I think the needs exist, and I don't think you'll get everything you want on your agenda accomplished without more resources. And it could be more consultants, it could be offloading duties to other departments, it could be all of you putting in 40 hours a week as volunteers. There are different ways to get at that, but the current situation, particularly with Marissa departing, makes that even harder. And I think it's important to, I will go ahead and note that the additional resources that Teresa and you need are not at the gopher level. They're at some ability to analyze
Manage it.
and manage and some real expertise with respect to the sustainability issues that are on the table. And as far as the solar garden goes, I don't have any particular comments other than I think you're headed in the right direction, and that you need to focus on the community aspect of community solar. The RFP itself doesn't really spell that out as much as it said. I made that point to council. Several members either sort of endorsed or made tangential comments that added to that, that it's not just a matter of, that it's not that difficult from an engineering perspective to put up 10 megawatts of solar out on that site, open up a subscription and presumably fill it. But to have it meet the community's needs, different constituencies, renters, small businesses, people that developers that build a new building that doesn't have enough capacity on the rooftop to be net zero without other resources. Lots of different blocks. You can't set the program up and say it's earmarked for this, but you can structure the deal to the customer in such a way that you address some of those issues. And of course, one of those customers may be the city.
So that I can make sure everybody's good. We're still on track for starting on time as far as our topics at 6:15.
So I'm done with my comments.
Did you have anything else with
No,
like data?
other than
You mentioned data.
I mentioned.
You said the matrix,
Yeah.
EV, solar gardens, data and resources.
Yeah, and I talked about data in the context of the
Okay.
quality of the data that was in the EV plan as an example of where
Got
we
it.
can do better.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to, if I can have 30 more seconds,
Absolutely.
I want to echo something that the mayor said last night, because I had put it independently in an email to Teresa, and that is, in the EV plan, the recommendation 1F or 1H that speaks to other motorized equipment, that one was written in a way that kind of wimped out. By and large, we should just do that.
Electric chainsaws. for
Electric chainsaws, electric trimmers, and so forth. We don't need a whole lot more analysis of that stuff. Somebody needs, I'd say go to Home Depot and get one, although I imagine there are industrial grade ones that are probably better suited to the community's needs. And if they have enough batteries, then they'll do the job. And it's important, not just because the city will be doing that with one machine, but because ultimately the city down the road ought to be asking you as a homeowner to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And all the contractors around town that drive mowers and so forth.
So you're saying electric equipment, let's roll on that now.
Yeah, you probably try one out before if you have 10 chainsaws, you go get one or two electric ones, try them out, pick the one you like.
So is that
Replace
on
the
our
other 8 or
agendas with the electric equipment?
Yeah, under the board update, we can talk about what's.
Okay,
in the
perfect.
draft and-
Very good. Thank you, Ken. Anything
Thank you
else?
all for being here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate your time.
Okay.
Okay, so discussion items, action items. First item is A, single-use plastics. And then as a reminder, we're going to move staff and board updates to B. And we're going to eliminate the actual city recycling ordinance. We'll come back to that for another later meeting. And then finally, community solar gardens. So A is single-use plastics update.
Sounds good, thanks. This one is a follow-up to a previous board meeting where we had talked about asking the potential legal risks or follow-up with being able to do something more from a standpoint beyond the state's single-use plastics bag ban. So just to kind of refresh our memory a little bit, the board made us recommendations back in February. City council reviewed those in April, and I think the consensus, there was some concern about having a separate timeline for implementation from the state and separate communication messaging from than what the state is planning on. So council's direction to us was stay with the current timeline that the state is going to do, and that is fees start January 1st of 2023 for plastic bags. The state collects or directs the collection of it. The city's participation in that is pretty minimal. It's a 10-cent fee. 6 cents comes to the city, 4 cents stays with the retailer. So that will start in January. And then in January of 2024, the statewide ban on plastic bags starts as well. So the state will run enforcement on that. And July 1st of 2024 is when the local government preemption of the ban is no longer. So that's the point at which, and I think that's kind of the focus of the memo that I included in your packet from the city attorneys, that's the opportunity, that if this board wants to make a second follow-up recommendation to city council, if city council decides to take action, it would be on that date or later. And the opportunities then include, do you want to widen this to plastic utensils, plastic cups, other types of.
These types of fees?
Fees too, yes. So it's kind of, it's very obvious. We've got about 25 other municipalities in Colorado that already do fees, that already do other bans on these items. It's our city attorney's opinion that Golden should not risk running afoul of that pre-exemption, the local government preemption.
So sticking to the same timeline as the state.
Yes, and so wait until July 4th to do anything outside regular plastic bags, do anything about different fees as well. So I think that's what's going on.
Are fees included in that preemption, or is it just the ban itself?
It is the fees as well.
Okay.
So, the state's fee is gonna be 10 cents, and I think what they're saying is, wait a year and a half, and then you can do whatever fees you want. It is different than what other cities have already done. We've got Frisco doing a quarter. I think we had all kind of considered, and this board had recommended higher fees, but it's kind of a risk evaluation here, so.
And the risk would be somebody filing some kind of lawsuit or claim against the city because of it.
Yes, I don't think we've seen that with those other cities that have already adopted something.
So the risk
However,
is pretty low.
It's low, but it's still there, and I think it's the attorney's job to tell us that, maybe their guidance is that we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't put ourselves out there for that risk, so.
Mayor?
I have a couple of thoughts, but I hate to, I'm just observing. But one, I think the other cities did it prior to the state passing a law. So the landscape's changed a little bit, and that the legislature has taken this up now and passed a law with dates. So the other cities who implemented things were before the state legislature took it up. So it's a little bit different now because we have a roadmap in a law that's been passed with dates. So I think there's a difference there. The risk probably isn't high. The other piece, though, is even, so I know July of 2024 sounds far away, but that doesn't mean we can't adopt an ordinance that's effective that July date earlier. So doing that work to figure out how much, what, fees or bans, and having council adopt it before then, so the effective date is concurrent with the state date and we don't wait. There's a lot of work involved, and so to plan that out, over the coming months, I think, would allow us to both adopt the ordinance with an effective date as well as roll out a good communication plan with the businesses, with the community, preparing in advance for it, for that rollout. So I know it seems far away, but to me, I'm like, oh, that's right around the corner because of all the work that needs to be done, but.
What
yeah.
work does need to be done? More specifically.
Well, I think this board needs to vet, what exactly do you want? We've got some initial thoughts about adding that list of items, increasing the fee. So having some public input around that, seeing a communication plan, like the mayor is talking about, how far in advance are we talking to the community about this upcoming date? What will the city do to roll that out? How are we gonna prepare for the extra fee collection or enforcement of the other items that the state isn't going to necessarily address? So I think that whole package, and what the mayor is suggesting here is to come back to council with a plan of action well before that date, so that if council wants to vote to recommend something, that we have plenty of time for implementation, and we know exactly what's going on and what the messaging is going to be and what items are included. I think the potential for confusion is pretty high. But after July 1st of 2024, we may see plenty of other cities doing something similar. We just have to be, I think the request is that we be very clear about what we mean and the input that we get from the community, that it's something that the community wants and accepts and is reasonable.
Is this an ordinance or would it be a referendum?
So it would be an ordinance that we would present to city council, so it would be embedded in the municipal
Okay.
code.
What I saw, I think Fort Collins had a higher fee, for example, at one point. And if I'm understanding what I've seen in changes on their webpage, they're actually dropping their fee lower to match the states. And I wonder if we're gonna see some combination of a bunch of individual cities that have developed their own plan,
Yeah.
kind of fall in line with a state pattern, or if we're gonna see, everyone fall in line on July 2024, and then all the, differential start coming up between what individual cities adopt. Fort Collins seems to be falling back to the state guidelines.
And I think several other cities are looking at that too. Their attorneys are looking at what the state is going to require, suggesting be better if you're in line with what the state recently adopted, even though their community has been having that or in place for quite a bit longer. So I think that all relates back to that communication and that messaging to avoid confusion.
Keeping it simpler as a small business owner, keeping it simpler for the businesses is also,
The small business owners, well, I guess for restaurant takeout, they're affected by the styrofoam ban, but they're not affected by the plastic pan bag, right? They have to be bigger, they have to have 4 stores within the state of Colorado.
You're right. There are quite a list of exemptions allowed
Yeah.
by the state.
I think, to me, that seems like that's where the opportunity to expand for the city of Golden
is what organizations it would apply
is.
to.
Is it reaching a broader range of the businesses in Golden? That's what people love about Golden, the small businesses, but that makes almost all of them exempt from much of this ordinance.
Are business owners gonna get copies of the plan, like the communication plan?
The state is probably rolling out what they have, because right now, if we do nothing, it's a state program. So the state's gonna give guidance to all of those businesses that qualify or are subject to those requirements. And I would imagine, and we've been waiting to see what their communications plan is going to be, in lieu of enough communication, I think the city should put out plenty ourselves, even if it were just the state program at this point. We'd like to do a little bit more, so people know what to expect and make it very clear, so.
And when.
Yeah. So we've been waiting for some communication packages from the state, but we haven't gotten anything yet. And it'll be good to probably have some key milestones of certain communication that we want to roll out.
So is this an agenda item for our future meeting?
I think so. You know, what we need to do is kind of quantify what are all the components of doing extra work and what kind of resources that's going to take. It does involve more, you know, involvement from our finance department, from our code enforcement department, potentially. So we need to identify all of those resources and bring those to you. We can do an easy draft communications plan and hit some key milestones with some of that messaging already in there without completing everything and come back to the board. It's not something that can happen in the next couple of months. I would suggest toward the end of the year, early 2023 is probably when we're queued up with other business kind of wrapping up. We've got a lot of kind of things on our plate, so.
Sorry, the thing takes effect in early 2023, so we've got to start communicating.
No, July 4th, 24.
It's phased.
So
The state's-
that's just the fees. The 10-cent fee starts, you know, January 1st, 2023, and then the plastic bag ban and the styrofoam ban start in 2024.
So the communication plan you're referring to doesn't have to do with the thing that's happening with the fee, the first step.
I think we can put out some general communication to our businesses before that. We have the Golden Informer, we've got a downtown merchants group. We can start to do some of that extra communication without needing anybody to kind of bless it. Of course, we would like to share, you know, what that messaging is to you, but I think we can start doing that anyway. We should just decide not to wait for the state necessarily and start doing
I
it.
think that would be the plan, get that on the, I mean, even like a rough timeline of what it would take to have something in
Mhm.
place, since I don't know how those things work very well, by July 2024, which means approving it however many months ahead of time, like, it would just help me to have the timeline. And I guess a question, because I know that the mostly previous board had a recommendation to city council to kind of jump ahead of this, that was postponed by this legal guidance. But where's the background research that was done to put that together so that we're not starting from ground zero again? Like where did 25 cents a bag come from? Where, you know, where's the, it would just be helpful not to start from ground zero because you know, we're new.
I'll forward to you that in the interim, some of the old board memos. It compiles a couple of pieces of research about fees and what communities ban or they limit or they might have a.
Yeah, I'd love to see whatever dump of background material there is. I think that might be I think this is one of the ones that my name is on as a little so.
Okay.
So I'm particularly interested in.
What is the state doing to help offset that cost for low-income populations? And is the city part of that, or is the state managing that?
I haven't heard anything that the state is involved in. Now, they're not going to be collecting any of the fees. And so the statute, I believe, says that the 4 cents that comes back to the city could be used in a multitude of capacities. You could choose to use it for things like that. You could use it to promote other waste diversion activities. It's pretty broad.
So
but-
that's probably a discussion that we should have sooner than later, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I saw Aspen had bag stations, reusable bags where you, just around the city that you could go pick up your grocery bags, and especially with a tourist town, which we mostly are too. So instead of buying them, they also had a collaboration with a business or two to get their name out there. So some businesses were sponsored these bags to make them available to the city.
I bet Yo Colorado would be interested.
Yeah, exactly. You get some advertising and you get subsidized bags.
Yeah, I think council would like to have that, I can't speak for council, would like to have, guidance or recommendation on what to use that 4 cents for. When the bag ban goes into effect, 1 year later after the fees go into effect, it will drop down to being only applicable to paper bags.
It's
So-
6 cents, isn't it?
Sorry?
6 goes to the city, 4 to the state, or the other way around?
It's still 10 cents, and 6 goes to the, sorry, did I say 4? 6 goes to the city, 4 stays with the retailer.
Has there been any kind of estimate on what that means for City of Golden, based on some kind of realistic assumption?
In the last memos that I will send to you, I kind of estimated how many bags we have in Golden. It could be about $40,000 to $50,000 a year if the fee applied to plastic and paper. Now, that only kind of is a projection for the first year, and then when it goes back down to paper, it would be less.
Is that if no one changed their behavior?
Right, right.
But that's the maximum.
I used Boulder's bag ban that they implemented about 10 years ago, and the kind of participation that they'd seen in the revenues that they collected from 10 cents, and then kind of used Golden's population, divided that out. So it's very probably imprecise estimate, but it won't be very much. I would suggest $40,000 during the first year at the top end at the most, and then,
Falling
probably.
off after that as people get more used to it.
Yeah, and I don't even know that you could even be somewhat accurate in saying that half when the bags get banned and it only applies to paper, because a lot of people will still bring their own bags or use boxes.
Yeah,
or
because
at
paper
grocery
bags are
stores.
terrible.
So we may see even less revenue based on that.
Yeah.
Hard to
Well,
do.
Mr. Jacobs had mentioned we need more resources, a source of funding,
Mhm.
perhaps, partial funding anyway.
Um,
Is there anything more we want to cover on it?
No, I'll send you the memos. The memos also contain some estimates about the cost to the schools. So Golden Schools are included in there. And so you have an idea of whether or not to recommend some of that money for, offsetting their costs.
Since we have you here, Mayor, would you like to join on any more comments on this?
No, I think you give great discussion, and yes, if we're going to be collecting fees in 2023, a recommendation from this board on using it, for the low-income population, using it for other communication or whatever, a recommendation for this board on what to do with that in 2023 would be wonderful, because we're certainly not thinking about it, or talking about it at the council level, so.
Well, aren't a lot of funds that come in revenue, isn't that typically attempted to be targeted for a like-for-like type of expenditure? So, i.e., in lieu fees for parking and planning commission would then go to pay for a parking structure or maintenance on a parking structure.
City imposed fees for sure, but these are state fees that the state is collecting and bringing to us. So yes, it'd be great to use it in a similar, to kind of address this new plastic program, ban program or fee. It'd be great to use it in that way, but I don't think that we have to. So if we wanted to use it for some other waste diversion activities and nothing to do with the plastic ban, certainly we have that opportunity, because it's a fee imposed by and collected by the state, just like a tobacco fee that we receive some portion of locally.
Got it.
So if we expand that to include areas outside of the state law, is that an entirely separate collection process? So straws all of a sudden come, okay, so it's a parallel process, so it does multiply
Yeah.
the bureaucracy, okay.
It's data collection and tracking of businesses, it's revenue fees collection in the finance department, it's enforcement of codes, if folks aren't complying. So it's a little bit extra.
Cool, we good?
Okay, sounds
Thank you.
So you're still on the podium, Teresa, with current business, I believe.
Sounds good. There's extra copies of the electric vehicle master plan. Is that what we have next? Sorry.
Can you pass me my name tag?
Thank you.
Go ahead, email.
I have one on my computer.
I'm good. So first of all, a huge thanks. Everybody contributed to that electric plan draft, and there was so many good edits. It really was a significant number of edits in the last couple of weeks. It really transformed the plan quite a bit more. So huge thanks to this board, because without your comments, it wouldn't be as nearly as good as it is, I think, now. Some of the more recent changes that ended up in the draft are that development of the decision-making matrix. And, you know, that decision-making matrix is actually called out in the Go EV resolution that council adopted, and is kind of a reflection of keeping staff accountable for the decisions that they're making on electric vehicles, being transparent to the community about how those decisions are being made. And the decision-making matrix is a bit imprecise still. It's a work in progress. We weren't able to really find one to copy from other communities. There's plenty of decision-making matrices for a personal electric vehicle investment or a choice like that. For fleet, there's relatively little data out there. There's plenty of commitments, but actually how some of these departments are implementing is a bit of a mystery. So I had talked with a lot of other Colorado communities and taken bits and pieces and gotten their input and lessons learned. So the decision-making matrix, in what we put in there is fairly important as part of this plan. It's related to some SMART goals, so they're timely, they're measurable, and the process is really to publish these decisions every summer. So that's the new part that you might not have seen in the last draft, is not only we're gonna use that matrix, but we're gonna publish them in July, June, July, and August, give the board a opportunity to view those upcoming purchases. And, you know, we don't have a ton of purchases every year. I'm thinking there's probably gonna be like 15 new cars that are scheduled for replacement. You know, you'll be able to see which ones cannot have an equivalent, which ones do have an equivalent, and how that kind of fares. There is a lot of discussion at the staff level to try out these first couple of vehicles. There's 4 of them coming. We haven't taken delivery of them yet. They're not available. So 2 plug-in hybrids are new for the police department, the Ford Interceptors. That was kind of a success from a field trip.
They've been received?
No,
Not yet.
no, they're still waiting. We're still waiting on those, but yeah, that was Arvada's fleet manager coming over and bringing one for our police to try out and take a look at. They were convinced. And then the 2 Ford F-150 Lightnings, what I had explained to council last night is kind of the workhorse of our fleet, pickup trucks. We have the most of those, and there's a breakdown in the plan. And so we're really kind of eager to find out how those pickup trucks are going to perform. They seem like a reasonable financial option, and based on the specs, they should meet our needs. If when we get those vehicles, our intention is to get them in the hands of as many staff members as are willing to try those out, because so many people use the trucks. And we could potentially see an accelerated timeline to meet those goals if those trucks are suitable and we can have more availability. Right now, we've been on that list for more than a year, probably close to a year and a half now, and still haven't been able to have any delivery of those vehicles. So I have no idea where we're at in Ford's queue, but you know, other communities are in a similar boat. I think Denver's waiting on 40 of them. So.
Hopefully we got our order before.
Yeah.
Hopefully your orders before they,
So we'll continue to do some, honestly, now that the plan is adopted, It's a work in active plan. There's a lot of next steps that are happening this year that are scheduled for 2023. One of those big ones is an assessment of all of the city buildings for fleet electric chargers. We did a great job in our last partnership with our solar developer to make a lot of our city buildings net zero. The Fleet Campus is one of those 6 buildings up there, 260 kilowatts. And having another 20 charging stations up there is going to probably kick us out of that net zero status. So we'd like to look at all of the city buildings where the vehicles are going to be stored, how much power is needed, and what we need to do to meet that power demand, and if possible, what we need to do to add more solar. There's 4 more buildings up there with some roofs that probably could have some solar panels, so it's totally doable that the electric charging will come from a renewable resource still, so that's happening in 2023. Also, in the meantime, we're looking at an electric trash truck as a pilot with Xcel Energy. They have an electric refuse fleet program that they just started. Those applications are due this Friday. I've been talking with Republic Services because, of course, we don't have any city staff that drive trash trucks. So I asked them, hey, if we host the charger and pay for the electrical consumption, will your staff be able to use this truck and use it for our residential program? They're a little tentative. They're a little fearful of some of the liability of having their staff operate a vehicle that may get into an accident. It's just some things to work out. So I do think we're going to move forward with the application. We don't know if we'll get selected, but the benefit of if we do get selected is Xcel will install a fast DC level 3 charger at our fleet maintenance shop, and something that we absolutely could use in the future and we get to keep. So it seems like a small price to pay for some electrical consumption for a garbage truck and have the hauler do it. So hopefully that will materialize, but we'll keep looking for those kind of opportunities for larger, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles in the future. Let's see.
Can the Lightnings and the Interceptors charge on that level 3? That would be a
Yeah.
supercharger.
Yep, I think so.
They
So,
shouldn't need it most of the time.
Yeah. So that is something we're gonna have to figure out a little bit, like overnight charging, time of use rates. I don't know that we're, affected or impacted by some of those Xcel rules, but we certainly will be in terms of kilowatt demand. So peak demand might impact us even if it is overnight charging the vehicles. So we'll have to assess a lot of those.
Can you share the live version of the decision matrix, like the Excel file or whatever it's in?
Oh, sure.
We have the, just the kind of digital copy.
Picture of it.
Yeah, I'll give you the Excel file. It's got some links into it because we tie back to industry kind of proven resources, fueleconomy.gov, U.S. Department of Energy.
Okay.
And part of that's because you can actually select and drop down the versions, and you can type in what you currently have and find the plug-in hybrid, the electric version, and compare them kind of side by side. So it seemed like a proven way for us. We're also using the Electrification Coalition software in Tandem. That's the one where you can put in a VIN number for something that has the exact make, model, trim, package, everything, and then finds the equivalent. Because sometimes that's difficult. Like if you're looking at a stripped down Ford F-150 to the Super Duty something version with turbo, I don't know. So we want to make sure we're doing apples to apples comparison. Good. What else?
The Energy Code Stakeholders Group update.
Okay, sounds good. No more questions about the fleet EV plan? I'll send you the matrix. It's not pretty, and to Kent's comment, there's a lot of parts of it that could be beautified and made clearer, and sometimes not my forte. So it's going to the communications department next to be beautified, and we'll clean up some of those abbreviations and add some of those things and make it acceptable
acceptable and accessible, actually, for web posting, but this version is on the web now, under electrifying transportation page. Sounds good.
What is next step on the fleet,
You know, the.
besides communication beautification?
Yeah, I think what we owe is, looking at the 2023 list of vehicles that are slated for replacement, and to try out and break this matrix and improve it.
Will we
So-
get to have our grubby fingers on that, to do that?
Yeah, I would like to. So we're a little bit behind where we would normally be in the year process, but I think we should at least try. I don't know that the staff is prepared to do this whole process yet, but we'll train them on things, and we'll at least get you something to look at. And that will be well before city council has the budget in front of them that will kind of provide for those vehicle replacements, so.
And then to Ken, I think it was Ken's point, getting on the equipment sooner than later? Electrical equipment, i.e. chainsaws.
Yes, that was kind of interesting conversation last night. We had thought that the equipment wasn't the one to have to meticulously track exactly how many of these we have. If we have 10 trimmers across 3 different departments and we change to an electric version, they should all change out. These aren't pieces of equipment that have a 10-year lifespan or a specific replacement policy. So they're in the inventory, but I think what we heard yesterday is to track them a little bit more and kind of do that evaluation. So we still have to have a plan for replacement for those. It's not specified in this yet.
I would suggest anything with a 2-stroke engine needs to be looked at heavily,
First.
because they are so polluting.
Yeah.
And available to replace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're burning oil straight out.
Yeah. That sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Okay, the next one, we're looking at the Energy Code Stakeholder Group.
Yep.
So we have a draft coming out that the 2 consultants owe us. They've showed us an initial draft. I think it went out to the folks that were on the stakeholder committee. The deadline for comments has passed, and we probably have another day or 2 in case anybody from the committee had wanted to suggest anything else. The consultants are wrapping it up because we're at the end of their contract term. So we should have a roadmap to share with you here pretty soon. We'll post it on the website. The next steps in that energy code project are that I am continuing to do some outreach to folks that didn't necessarily participate in that group very well, commercial business owners, commercial tenants. We didn't hear a lot from that group. So we need to do more outreach. I've gone to a couple of meetings for downtown owners, done some outreach individually to larger developers. So really what we need over July and August is more input from that group. I'm gonna work with planning staff as well to reach out to some of their developers of applicants that are coming in for new development to get their take on things. So we need to round out some more of that community outreach. We're tentatively planning for a joint couple of dates between this board and planning commission to work together on a joint recommendation. It does look like early September, planning commission has time on their agenda. They have 2 meetings a month, whereas we have one. Their first one is a study session in September, so it's like the first or second week of September. I'll send you out some dates, and it might be easy, although I want to be respectful of your time as well. If we met them at their study session to work on things, we could find a 3rd date. It's probably not a preference of anybody to have yet another meeting. So if we have 1 or 2 of those joint meetings, both boards would have a decision for action at the end of September or early October. And so our goal in all of this is to come together with a recommendation that then you can forward to city council. We owe that to city council in Q4 of this year. We've been kind of on track to provide it in early October, late September. We might have to push that a week or two, a couple of weeks, but I think that's what we're shooting for is a joint recommendation. And again, what the boards are looking for is that above code kind of extra actions that new development and existing development would need to do regarding energy conservation, energy codes. So last night, city council passed the 2021 versions of the building codes and the fire codes. To some extent, that's an expected occurrence. We do that every 3 years.
It's just the base code.
Yes, yeah. So now what we're talking about is above the base code and what's appropriate. So you'll have some things to consider for brand new construction and some things to consider for existing construction as people come in for remodels, things like that.
Has Scott weighed in on triggers?
The consultants, I asked for a better list of triggers that we can review. And so the answer is no, but we're waiting to see what the consultants are going to give us first. And
Triggers are, if somebody's doing a minor remodel, they only have to do X. If somebody's doing a major remodel, it's basically new construction. That would be a trigger that Zero Energy would then perhaps be required.
So I do think what Scott follows is there is a set of triggers already embedded in the code, level 1, level 2, level 3.
Exactly.
Remodel. It kind of depends on, sometimes it's a trigger of less than 50% of the floor area of your house, more than 50%. So he follows those because that's what's embedded in the code. I think the other triggers that we've been talking about are, what if somebody comes in for a water heater? What if somebody comes in for a new furnace? What if they're coming in with new windows? Do we have incentives that we can pair with that? What are the financial ROI within the industry? So one thing we really heavily promoted this week and last week was Xcel Energy just bumped up their bonuses for rebates for heat pumps, air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, mini split things. They added another $1,000 to their already existing $1,000. City matches with up to $500. So we've been heavily promoting that up to $2,500 if you want to invest in one of those now and look at replacing your system. So
That's the combined total? Well,
yeah,
What's the
good deal.
cost? Average cost?
depends.
It depends.
Yeah, it does depend. I
Yeah,
mean,
codes range.
Newsletter said 1,800.
18?
I would suggest 1,800 is probably on the low end of what you could get away with. And if you got a whole house system that's multiple zones and,
That can be 15 to 20.
yeah.
Install cost.
Yes, what's given in the newsletter is the marginal cost of a heat pump compared to ordinary air conditioning.
Margin.
The additional
Difference.
cost you pay, yep.
Right, and Tim's talking about just the air conditioning unit, right? So, yep, that's about right.
But a true whole house heat pump would be your source of heating as well as your
Yeah.
source of cooling. And if you're electrical everywhere else, you can cut your gas line, and there's fixed fees that go away, and there's a lot of other ramifications or, good things related to it.
We're hoping it facilitates some more discussion within the community with qualified contractors, asking about it, more people that are interested in it.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions on the energy code stakeholder?
Does that consultant do the job of taking the stakeholder input and producing a recommendation, or do we do that job?
The consultant does it, and they do it twofold. One is they're giving us their own recommendations as experts in the field, and they're summarizing what the stakeholder group recommendations are. They might be slightly different, but that's our expectation that's outlined in the contract.
And then we're free to make a third completely different recommendation.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of this, is then you get to take the public input that we receive, the consultant's recommendation, the energy code stakeholders' recommendation, and then come up with what you think is reasonable with planning commission. And then council could even or modify it slightly. I think having a lot of different perspectives and enough public input is the important part here to come up with a solution for Golden. But after this consultant is done, which is coming up here pretty soon, because we only hired them for the energy code stakeholder group, we do have the start of another consultancy that is going to help the building department navigate the energy code requirements that we currently have, which are embedded in the sustainability menu right now, and the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. So we have some technical assistance coming for the building department. And they will also probably be the ones to help us further identify what technology we should incentivize, what technology is probably okay to not incentivize anymore because it becomes a standard commonplace kind of thing. So they'll help us reevaluate that hopefully every year.
And to provide some background, this has been going on for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
2 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, 2 years? Where it's a joint subcommittee between sustainability and the planning commission, and we've been, meeting on, basically develop this recommendation. Our initial objective was to get everything done by the end of this year,
Mm-hmm.
so that we would go into a training phase for the first part, or maybe the entire 2023. And then it would go live in 24, is that correct? Maybe it was a year, we're a year late.
Yeah.
We might be a year back.
I think there's some notice requirements, as always, that we would want to give the community a heads up, but there's I forgot where I was going with this, but I think some of the parts for new construction are meant to be sooner. And some of the other existing buildings might need a little bit more. But there are certain intentions here to have things start as soon as council wants to adopt them.
Anything else? So now we go into community solar gardens.
All right.
So have a nice night.
Good luck.
Started this conversation.
Nice to see you. Thanks for joining.
And we're a little bit ahead of schedule.
That's a first. Does she work for solar or something? She works for one of the companies. Oh, one of the veterans. She's recusing herself.
We probably should have had her announce that.
Oh, sorry.
No, we don't often have that.
Yeah, it's rare, man, yeah.
Rare. Okay, if you'd like, so I have the staff memo in front of you here. I think we sent it out as part of the previous links. There's a lot to this. And so I'll just go over what the process is a little bit. I'll talk about what council said last night a little bit more. And then our aim today is really, and hopefully folks have had a chance to review this. This is a lot of information that was on, we linked it on the website because it's so much. It's 150 pages altogether. Hopefully folks have had a chance to take a look at those proposals. You can pass those around. I only printed off a couple of copies, but
Oh.
That's nice, just.
so in the staff memo, there's a couple of things. One is, we've been talking about community solar since 2008. There's a huge amount of history to this. So on the city website, I linked the background information. It's what we have a community solar garden webpage. We talk about the enabling legislation. We talk about the guiding principles that city council adopted several years ago that says, if we ever have a community solar garden, here's some criteria that we should weigh it against and make sure that the community solar project has that in there. It's got School of Mines studies on that webpage. We did studies for all 3 of the sites that we're currently looking at. Those School of Mines reports are uploaded there. It talks about the community-wide vote in 2017 where 81% of the voters said yes to adding renewable energy uses to Rooney Road, to to allow community solar out there. So I did not provide a whole lot of history in here, there's a short timeline.
That one's off the table though, isn't it?
Yeah, so now if we talk a little bit about the sites, the 3 sites, the first one that is kind of off the table is the one that we've been focused on for the last 10 years. The Rooney Road landfill, closed landfill, owned by Jefferson County, under lease by the city of Bolden because of the recreation fields that are there. So city owns and maintains those fields. We coordinate all of the soccer groups with Table Mountain Soccer. And there's extra space on the landfill cap that, according to the agreement, was just kind of surplus space that might have been used for more fields, more parking later. When we did some analysis of that site, we said, well, how much solar can fit up there on that landfill cap? And let's keep some space for more soccer fields and more parking. Even with the extra space, there was enough for a 2-megawatt solar garden.
Well, that's it.
At the time, that's all Excel was allowing. They've since raised their cap on the sizes.
So they just went to the max anyway.
So we just went to the max, yeah. So it probably could fit 3 or 4 megawatts up there. But what we had assessed it for was 2. And the School of Mine Studies said, yes, this will work. We had some technical guidance from NREL and from the EPA because it's a brownfield site. So there's some extra engineering requirements based on that site. It's a cap, so you can't penetrate the cap. It has to have a ground mount system, so it just floats on top with concrete or something like that. So it's very specific design. You have to still facilitate drainage off the cap. You still have to work around the gas collection wells that are out there, and there's probably about 15 to 20 of those. So it's not a perfect site, but there's very little, few sites that are flat, oriented to the south, able to interconnect and free. So that was
You're
one
not gonna
that
build anything
was
else on.
into our top.
But it's off the table now?
It's off the table because
Per Jeffco.
Jeffco is looking at, if you might have seen, they're creating really a park up there. They're calling it Tin Cup Park, and there's a master plan process that's in place right now that's going on to look at all of the uses up there. So it's not just the soccer fields, and honestly, the soccer fields are failing a little bit.
They're pretty bad.
Ground is settling.
My kids play there.
Yeah.
They're pretty bad.
They're pretty bad. Rooney Road Household Hazardous Waste Center is up there. The county has told us they're gonna reopen the slash site, yay, in spring or summer of next year. That's a huge boon for us for other reasons, but with the rest of it, they're really trying to figure out what does it wanna be. And so I think the solar garden uses are kind of on hold, depending a little bit more about the interests of Jeffco.
Got it. So the north, that leaves the north.
Right,
So Jeffco could decide they want a solar garden,
absolutely.
because that would be an ideal use for that.
I think what would be a
Crummy
great
land.
thing is some sort of partnership between the
Yeah.
city and the county,
Yeah.
especially since it's in our lease area still. So that leaves 2 other sites that have the better potential at materializing. One is under our control, but it's really small. The retention pond off of Catamount Drive, right in front of it's not called the GE building anymore, now it's in some sort of botanicals thing on the corner there. It's below the city maintenance shops. It's right below the Brickyard House. So if you know where the Brickyard House is, that old historic building that we saved from the Kilgore Ranch when the city bought that whole area. So the retention pond has some possibility. The mines students evaluated that site, found it could hold about 100 kilowatts. It's on the small end. It probably could hold a little bit more, but not much more. So 10 kilowatts is around 10 homes or a little bit more than that. But that one might offer some options for
100
us.
kilowatts.
100 kilowatts is 10 homes.
Yes, did I say 10
Yeah.
kilowatts? Yeah, sorry, 100 divided by 10. That one might offer some other flexibility for community solar for other users. It certainly wouldn't meet our low-income capacity. It's not gonna meet any of our business or residential capacity. It could be used for something else like rooftops from historic buildings that would have trouble installing rooftop solar because of certain historical guidelines or regulations. So the students, I asked them to evaluate a lot of the public historic buildings, Foothills Art Center, Astor House Museum, and combine those and find out how much of this site could generate. It can cover the capacity, the consumption for about 5 or 6 of those public historic buildings. It's just an option. So then we get to the main site off of 56th Avenue. This is outside the city limits, just a kind of reminder. And in the packet and on the website, there's one-pagers that describe those sites. The evaluation gets it a little bit into the cost analysis of that and the potential. So this is a lot of information, but we've kind of posted these on the city website if somebody wants to dive deeper into those specific sites. It talks about the generation. So the site on 56th Avenue, the city leases from the state land board. It's not inside our city limits. We don't own it. We found it several years ago and identified that the state land board owns it. It's kind of an interesting history that the state land board was granted by federal authority a section of land in every section and township in Colorado. This happens to be their surplus property in this section. And so we approached the state land board a couple of years ago and said, hey, we're looking for a site for community solar. Do you ever lease these to Solar Gardens? And they said, yes. We have a process that is a planning lease. In the first couple of years, you do all your feasibility analysis and decide if it's going to work for a community solar project. And then we have a production lease that is a different lease. And that is a 20, 25, 30-year lease. And those terms are based on a rental fee for the land that is based on the production of solar. So it's tied in with the capacity of what it can generate out there. The state land board, when they gave us the production lease, said, we're also interested in being a customer if this works out for you. So they may be willing to look at their terms for the revenues that they would collect and maybe give us a break if they were a subscriber. I don't know. So those are the 3 properties that we're looking at.
The key is 20 gigawatt.
10 megawatts for that. Yeah,
What's the screw
Potential
on-
generation, 13 megawatt, well, let's
30
see,
megawatts, yeah.
with potential generation of 20 gigawatt, okay.
Yeah,
And
so, you know, the students doing the study are, you know, it's kind of what I would call a preliminary, very basic study. They did a good job, but we need professional studies to figure out what that would actually generate and the layout and the design. So now we're at this process, and we've kind of talked about this before, where we're looking for a partner. The city is not going to be the person or the entity to build this. We need to partner with an organization that is qualified to build it, that has investors behind it, that have that either venture capitalist or tax appetite to take advantage of those federal tax credits, because the city cannot. We don't pay taxes. So it does benefit us to partner with a qualified developer. The next pieces of this are really then to, after you choose a developer, work with them on design, site design, construction design, program design. And program design relates directly back to those guiding principles that we had talked about before. And this board had recommended and council adopted. And those have very specific demands. We demand that this benefit all Golden residents and citizens and businesses and low-income folks, that it be very easy to subscribe and unsubscribe, that the subscription amounts can be either very small or very large, and that the city might be a participating subscriber. So there's a priority for using local business, local installers in that as well. So those are all things that in the past, community solar developers that we have been approached by haven't necessarily been willing to adhere to. Somewhat through no fault of their own, the way the program is designed, best bet is to find 20 subscribers and call it good for 20 years. So their administration and program oversight is a little bit less, and when we look at the bids, that's kind of a big component of what we need to look for, is a company that is willing to take on the program subscription to what we need, and to be able to build that out to what the values of Golden is, and not just the values of what their business needs are. So after that program design and site design, we would come back and take a look at a package, decide if it is acceptable to submit to Excel's program. And we don't know when Excel's program is going to be open this year. They haven't announced it yet. They haven't approved their current year renewable energy plan with the PUC, which will set that date and that opening. They also have not announced what their criteria will be to judge community solar. That doesn't come until they've received applications, ironically. So we have some of this element is a bit flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. And the chances and opportunity with the solar garden is difficult. That program has been oversubscribed for a couple of years now, and there's a lot of people wanting to get into it. So, if this was a possibility that we could design a program to meet a lot of their criteria and make it packed full of the things that we thought Excel and the PUC want, we would do so. We don't have that right now. We can kind of go based on what they've had in the past and look at those successful examples, but and then the last step is really to come back to the city and with the whole package and say, okay, now what do we want? Do we want to be a participant? Do we want to be hands-off and not have anything to do with this? Do we want to eventually own-
Participant meaning subscriber.
Subscriber, yep. Do we want to subsidize any of the components of this, like more low-income, other types of groups in Golden? And all the way to, do we want to eventually own the solar garden? So there's going to be a lot of options later that we can, once we have a partner, once we build out the cost scenarios, once we build out like the site plan and what the program is going to entail, there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity for input and kind of refinement. So all of this is to say you have 4 proposals. And what we're really looking for tonight is a direction towards a partnership of one of these companies. There's some evaluation in the staff memo that I provided. We can talk about things that are important to this board. And I think City Council is awaiting your recommendation on who you think we should partnership with. It is scheduled for another City Council action on August 23rd. So they had a discussion last night. We kind of talked about these exact same things. I'm sorry, because you have to hear it twice. It's probably hard enough last night with the long meeting, but so that is the next step. Is this board, if you have recommendations, inclinations about what you feel would be a good partner, and we can discuss this thoroughly tonight. I think Todd's kind of cleared off the board's agenda for the rest of the night to make sure that you have enough time to talk about.
Correct.
So ask anything, and if we can get to a general recommendation tonight, we would forward that to City Council.
So we're good till 8:25 is our next item, and that's really to talk about next meeting's agenda. So,
Okay.
does anybody need a bio break?
Okay.
All right.
I do need my glasses.
Is there a precedent for the city to own a piece of capital that's on the leased land?
I'm gonna take a bio break. I'll be right back.
I don't know necessarily. I'm sure it exists in other communities. There aren't a ton of opportunities that we have vacant land sitting around that we would own already. So there probably are other communities that, an extreme example is you could own a wind farm on the Eastern Plains, you could own a solar farm in Colorado Springs, and your net energy would be kind of exchanged there. But for leased property, I think, if this was a private market ownership, I would say that that would be more difficult. But since this is the state land board and they have an established program and they're willing to give 20, 25, 30-year leases, I think that it would be okay.
Okay, what's the scoop on the PV system that's already at their own site?
Good question. So, Clean Energy Collective is a older, community solar garden developer that is now defunct. And they owned it. It was one of the original systems that got approved. It's 500, I think it's 500 kilowatts. I don't know if you know anything different, but, I believe the bank still owns it now. So they went bankrupt. They, stopped maintaining the site. A bank, their funding, lender took it over, and I think they still own it. We did look into purchasing it and, seeing what the opportunity was, but they indicated that they weren't interested in selling it.
Is it producing power?
And the bank did hire an operator that knows what they're doing,
Okay.
so it's
So it's
functional.
It's doing something.
Yeah.
And what about the subscribers?
I don't know much. You know, that's been the difficult part, is to kind of extract examples. Like, I honestly have relied on Ken sometimes of saying, you're a solar garden subscriber, you know, what's your experience? Like, and Ken generously kind of explained some of the options for subscribers and what kinds of things that they have, but I don't know.
It's a small number. Our household is one, and it's, 20 or 30 households, that's it.
And
So-
it's oversubscribed.
Yeah, and I actually have access by my sign-in to their database, and it doesn't show addresses and stuff, but you see how much capacity each one, it looks like households.
Yeah, good. So,
There's a preference for a local firm. There is only one local firm. So how strong is that preference?
The preference in the guiding principles in the resolution is for, I think, solar installers that are local.
Ah, so that's none of this.
Right, McKinstry does have
A local
some history
presence.
with us. They have local presence, their headquarters for Colorado are in Golden. They were our, energy services contractor twice. The first one for energy efficiency for city buildings. The second energy services contract was for all of the 650 kW of solar that are on those 9 city buildings. They installed those. They used the 2 only solar installers that are currently in Golden. They were part of that construction. They received a chunk of the work. So they have some precedent with us in using local installers.
So I understand maybe that's the intent. What it says though is prioritize golden vendors in bidding and construction.
Yes,
Yeah, this isn't construction.
vendors. So, I mean, I do think, I think your point is valid though. So they have a Colorado headquarters here in Golden. So I would consider them as a local, local vendor.
Okay. But it's possible that one of these other out-of-town outfits hires a local installer for some of the installation, and that's on the spirit of the, that
They could, I will
it's
stick,
required.
yes, we could require it. I will tell you what I told council last night. A scale this size for the 56th Avenue property, nearly 22,000 solar panels. The local installers are,
Not
have
big
a big
enough.
chunk of
Not
it.
a similar system.
Yeah,
Not just the big system, the different systems.
right.
I understand.
So I think if we found a partner, one of our questions would be, how can you involve our local installers and let them tell us some ideas of, how they could incorporate them?
Could we go through just the evaluation criteria
Yeah.
here as a framework for the conversation, maybe? I mean, I don't know how thoroughly you want to go through each of these tables, but it seems like that's a valid, sequence to go through. And the first thing I'm looking at is this managing subscriptions, which you have flagged as a priority, especially for something that's, we want it to be dynamic for the community and not necessarily stable for the operator, right? That's
Right.
one of our priorities.
Mhm.
And so I see, you know, 4 proposals, one with kind of no information, which is a flag in a reddish color for me.
Right.
And 2 with very specific partners for managing subscriptions, and one with sort of, well, outsource it in a vague sense, but they've got experience doing it, Unico.
Right.
So is there more differential in that table than what I'm seeing, just with EnergyLink is clearly differentiated in this table? But beyond that,
I think Sunshare is probably the only one that does it in-house, and they've been used to doing it in-house. I think if you're looking at McKinstry and Unico, and I did get a follow-up email from Unico saying, we do have third-party partners that are well-established, that they have ongoing relationships with. So they wanted me to kind of emphasize that, and they've been in business for 69 years, which, may not-
They are their third party.
the third party, yeah. So, you know, there is kind of, I would suggest that the ones that do it in-house might have an advantage here, in terms of subscriptions, you know, if they're local. If they're national subscription partners, then maybe it's kind of all things being equal, that, you know, there's experience that they would have running a subscription program, that if they're vetted nationally and they have a lot of experience doing it nationally, they might be experienced for us, as opposed to if somebody's doing it in-house and they're local and they're here, you know, we could talk with them a little bit more, as far as subscription goes, but.
I looked into the CSP and because it has a name that's really similar to something that was launched yesterday by the Department of Energy.
Oh, no,
So I was confused about whether it was precious on that front. It's a different thing.
yeah,
I think Community Solar Platform is maybe what they call the product. This is the McKinstry proposal for who to outsource the subscription management to.
yeah,
The short answer is it's a completely different thing.
okay.
Sadly. But because I was in the search, I could see that they've got a ton of community solar systems in Colorado in particular. So, in this case, I don't think outsourcing, arranging the subscriptions is a weakness.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a ton of work, and I wouldn't fault anybody for finding specialists.
that is something that presumably over the course of a contract could change at their will potentially.
That sounds like it, yeah.
Whereas if it's in-house, it is maybe less likely to, you kind of get what you think you're getting.
Well, I think in the
Which is
case of
good and bad.
Sunshare, I view Sunshare as a community solar outfit, right? So I don't think I agree with you that that's not likely, they're not likely to outsource that portion of the job.
Okay.
Is it time for the next table?
I think so.
I think that in the solar business, 5 years is a lot of years, so these are all more than 5, except for the blank one.
Yeah, Unico, did you
Unico
get
doesn't have a number.
an update on that?
They followed up with an email and said that we should fill in the blank with 69 years.
Really?
Oh, not doing solar, but,
When added together by the experience of all the employees, or,
The third
not-
party?
No, that's how
not
long
where
they've been in
these others
business.
came from.
Yeah.
That's how long the third party's
they're
been in
real
business?
estate,
No, they just said Unico has been in business for
69 years. Yeah.
What-
how long have they been in the solar business?
It's in here, I think.
Oh, is it?
I thought McKinstry was older than that.
I'm,
Might have answered different.
I think Main Street is, that number is their
Yeah,
presence in Colorado.
Oh,
Business.
And, you know, to be fair, they started off as a energy services, energy efficiency building contractor, but have moved into the solar realm. And that probably,
I thought they
represents-
were more of a commercial builder,
Um,
historically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
energy services contractor, so commissioning,
energy efficiency retrofits. They are qualified through the state as a energy services provider on that list, and so local governments, state schools can use a list of companies to do the retrofits on their older buildings. We vetted them through an RFP process in 2006 and hired them. We were, I think, their first customer in Colorado.
Yep.
They retrofitted, they did all of the energy efficiency retrofits for the city buildings in 2006 and 2007. It was a $1.6 million project, and it had a return on investment in about 7 years. Mostly lighting and air handling units, energy efficiency.
Low hanging fruit.
Yeah. Mhm. Based on the success of that one, we did also another RFP for another energy services contract, and this one was 100% renewable energy, solar. We were done with the energy efficiency thing. So the thing we used to say, which was a quote from this guy named Tom that used to be at the state, is you have to eat your energy efficiency vegetables before you have your renewable energy desserts. So our second effort with city buildings was renewables, because we had finished and completed all of the low-hanging fruit that's Todd's talking about. So once we finished the first one, we again went out to bid for the second one. McKinstry won that one as well, and they were the ones to install our 9 solar projects on city buildings.
Solar projects is our next category.
Sorry?
Solar projects that they've done, I think, is our next
Yeah, I'm
category.
looking at that next bit of info.
This one, we got some follow-up information. Sunshare would like you to know that the actual number of Colorado projects that they have is 25. 25 different projects in Colorado. I have an X in that column because they didn't have anything. Let's see.
In, they're talking about solar garden type projects specifically.
Yes,
That's a ton.
they have a lot.
104 megawatts
Where are they
of
located?
community solar.
For
They have a Denver network.
Sunshine.
And they do their own subscriptions management, okay.
I see they have references in their RFP. Do they have like project examples or highlights?
Yes,
Which
I
one?
think they're in the larger package.
Yeah, I'm looking at the
This is
Sunshare.
McKinstry
Yeah.
Well, for Sunshare,
for Sunshare.
for the 25 in Colorado.
I do wish they would have listed more of those, because their references are subscribers to their
Yeah.
programs.
I mean, yeah, their proposal's probably not as good as, in terms of just how it looks, McKinstry and Unica.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't seem as complete.
Is
as
storage on the table for this project?
So the thing with storage is we're extremely interested in storage, and I think, we're looking for a partner that would do it in the future. There isn't a current solar garden out there in Colorado that does storage. Nothing yet. So it's a nice to have, and it would be great to have somebody that has some experience with it, but
Not with
it
mine.
hasn't been done yet with community solar.
I mean, I just see that only listed, well, I see it listed for,
So you might take that with a grain of salt.
yeah,
To be lower.
Sunshare,
is that like their R&D division?
yeah.
I think that's less important for community solar
Seems like a-
than other.
Well, Excel
Types
will
of
be the
instance.
storage essentially.
Mhm.
So I think it's less.
Would you say selling it? would be take-
Excel will,
Oh, okay.
The grid
For
will
the, yeah.
need the battery more or less.
Gotcha. It's more important if you're considering like a household level, if you
Uh-huh.
wanna generate your own power. Or if your power goes out, you wanna be able to generate your own power, then you need storage, but I don't think a community solar storage is not. It's like you said, it's a lower, I would say it's a lower criteria, in
Yeah,
terms of
I
not-
just
not as
saw it on
important.
some and,
Yeah,
it
not as
was-
important, I think.
okay.
I don't know, most of them say design build too, but they're proposing to hire an EPC contractor
Mhm.
to design build themselves, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I agree that this focus list is maybe not qualifying.
Uh-huh,
Mm.
okay.
Or disqualifying.
I think, and one of the things that Sun Chairman followed up, he said the number of subscribers, they had a couple of other points. And I think what I've kind of gained in looking at a lot of these is the people that have, the companies that have regular interaction with Xcel Energy are probably gonna be the companies that have the in-house expertise and the engineering and the most likely chance that when solar storage comes available, that they'll be working on it. So,
I personally feel like Excel Energy Experience is a higher qualifier than, do they have an office in Golden or Denver or Boulder?
yeah.
Yeah, as long as they have an office in Colorado. I think
Like, that they've got that experience, that,
And where does it say whether they've got a fairly
it's
extensive?
somewhere coming up, I think.
Which part?
The extensiveness of their partnership with Excel,
I
or
would read
knowledge
that-
of.
Yeah,
I would
how
read
did you
that
interpret
as
that?
Having projects that are in Excel's territory,
So we're talking about the number of megawatts essentially in
and
projects.
especially community solar specific ones where the array is gonna be extra weird with detail,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I don't know another way to measure that.
Unless it's in like Minnesota or something, that's another Excel.
I think that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I'm saying that would count.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see the Denver Post article, the woman who was the local Excel Energy, kind of next-gen renewable woman has gone to the corporate level, in,
Yeah.
I think in Minnesota. So.
Yeah,
that-
Alice Jackson.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that was an interesting article I didn't know about before. So
She's
Like-
gonna
like
be,
that's
she's
the
gonna go
level.
higher, I think, too,
Right, okay, good.
my prediction.
so the references has anybody reached out to these references?
Only to the extent that I looked at whether or not they owned a garden or they were just a subscriber. So, you know, these folks have rooftop systems or installed solar systems mostly. Or participants in solar garden.
Yeah, if the references are
As
just
a
subscribers, I don't think they're very
Yeah.
useful.
Is it an option to visit a community solar site that one of these firms has done? That would be,
I think we could ask.
that would be.
That would be cool.
Absolutely.
We could-
Yeah, if you're interested in that, we could make that happen.
Of course I am, but that's not.
I'd go.
Yeah, same.
You could teach me everything you know.
Is it possible to narrow it down to 2 and have them come present, or do we not have time for that?
I think you have time if you would like another meeting between now and the 23rd. And you could combine that with a field trip.
Mhm.
You could also have them present to you here and show you their solar garden projects if you didn't want to go on site. And I am with you, it's always fun to do a field trip.
Done
Yeah.
in PowerPoint, I'm
Yeah.
just seeing it enough.
Although I think the references, talking to any organization they've worked with before to develop one would be the best references to
Mhm.
Yeah.
talk to, because they're gonna say how easy they are to work with. and-
Yeah. So what I could do for you is, if you're looking at a couple of these, and it depends on which one, but, for example, the solar garden that City and County of Denver has produced, in combination with one of these partners, we could talk with City and County of Denver. Their field trip is gonna look a little different. Their solar garden is also a mix of distributed rooftops, in addition to kind of a large scale. And then they have phase 2 and 3, I think, or future phase plan, so that might not be
criteria would be more like the kind of dynamic, the tone of the collaboration with the city, right? Like not necessarily how exact of an overlay is the project, but
Yeah.
are they,
Yeah.
are they
Responsive.
collaborative? Are
Are they
they
collaborative?
clear communicators? Are they timely? Are they
Yeah.
on budget or focused on that?
So one thing to establish there is whether these municipalities are as hands-on as we intend to be. On account of if they're only subscribers, municipal subscribers to community solar thing that was already produced as a business.
They just kind of walked into
Yeah, I don't think
They
that's
just
prefab.
signed up to be subscribers, that's a different relationship.
Yep.
And we're talking about
Potential.
first-party
Yeah.
ownership
Yeah.
and lots of hands-on meddling in the way that the subscribers are selected and managed, right? And there's a third element. So the third element isn't common, or maybe not.
Yeah.
The city would, this system's being built at the city's demand, by the city,
City backed.
essentially. And those three elements are way different from,
Subscribe.
Sunshare decides to build a system nearby and the city subscribes. So I would be interested to hear if any of them has dealt with such a handsy, relationship
With the
with
municipality,
the
right?
municipality. And those references would be gold.
Yeah, and if you look at like Unico, they've got a list that, you know, they work with the city of Denver, Xcel Energy, Community Solar Garden, City of Denver.
Yeah, so does Sunshare too. They have their list.
Yeah, they've got some specific.
So if those are city-owned, that would be really interesting to know.
Yeah.
And it would be great to go and see.
The ones I know about are City of Boulder and City and County of Denver. We should ask Sunshare, but I don't know if any of I think they're kind of clearly in community solar more than out of these four, but whether or not they have partnered with the city, I'm not sure, as opposed to just running the whole site, and they have a bunch of subscribers.
In fact, their specific proposal is to build a system at no cost to the city.
Yes.
And so that makes it seem like the same as the other systems, like the difference is that it was the city's idea and it's the city's lease.
Yeah.
Right, other than that, I think I anticipate they'd operate the same as the other sites. So I don't know if the benefits of first-party ownership are available to that.
Okay.
I don't know what the benefits of first-party ownership are. Madeline mostly, which I'm a big fan of.
How are subscribers selected? Like in terms of just like all these criteria, low-income renters, homeowners, like how does that open up that opportunity for market share?
It's a good question. If you play in Excel's community solar program, you have to open it up to everybody in the county, and I think now the latest rule is and the adjacent counties. So, those folks can all kind of apply to this and be considered for subscribers. If the city wanted to design a program that said, we'd like to prioritize Golden somehow, it might involve some sort of reservation of a certain amount of the solar garden for even the municipality to be distributed to more residents, or an incentive program that buys down the subscription for Golden residents and businesses. We'd have to kind of look into that. We can't run afoul of Excel's rules and say we're closed to everybody except City of Golden limits. We do have to open it up into that. And
Okay.
Why is that, do you know?
it's an equity and opportunity thing. I think that Excel, generates, they're buying the power, and so that power is conceivably feeding the region. It's not the same exact electricity because it goes back onto the grid, and the grid powers our homes, but I think in theory, the program was meant to, generate additional resources for the regions that they're built in.
Who sets the rates?
So the rates are a combination of what the developer would like to charge, the value of renewable energy credits that they are offering Excel and Excel accepts, and probably a little bit of, combination of, their capital investment, their tax depreciation, their, depreciation of the system and tax benefits, in accordance with the federal, investment tax credit, the 26%, 24% that's kind of being offered. So,
The
I-
order of the systems is there.
Yes,
Is
yes.
that the answer?
Yes.
According to a bunch of factors that you've named.
it is, and I'm sorry to get to that very
No,
directly.
Well, yeah, my direct question is, if a philanthropist come in and said, we're gonna give free electricity away
Yeah.
from this community solar system, does the utility still charge all the subscribers 11 cents more?
So no, so what happens is Excel's gonna still charge you some fees because they're pretty good at charging those
Oh,
fixed
man.
fees that are on your bill every.
And are they fixed? Go on.
They're approved by the PUC. And I think of this as a little bit of a market demand, how they set the rates. If they set rates that are above Excel's, or highly above Excel's, nobody's gonna subscribe, right?
Sure.
So they have to build a system that is in line with Excel's rates. They do have kind of 4 subscription models, and Ken was instrumental in helping me put this together because he's a subscriber. And what we kind of showed council last night, which was meant to show the public of what's coming up, is a couple of different ways to subscribe. One is an upfront cost. Give us X thousand dollars. You're in the system. You're getting the benefit. You're paying. You're receiving the net energy consumption to offset your home, and you don't have to pay in anymore. You still get to pay Excel's fees, but you don't pay the per kilowatt price to Excel anymore. Another pricing scheme is we're gonna negotiate a fixed rate for you for the term of your subscription. So if you invest in 10 years, 20 years, you're paying, maybe it's, let's just guess, you're paying 15 cents per kilowatt hour for those 20 years. You're hedging your bets that 15 cents is more than what the going rate is right now, but in 10 years, is it going to be more than 15 cents? And that's kind of one of the models. Another model is a set amount increasing every year, but it's regular and it's expected. So you might start off at 8.5 cents, and it goes to 10 cents in 3 years, and then it goes to 12 cents. And it's something that you can expect. You're also hedging your bets that Excel's prices are gonna be higher. They're gonna go up at a steeper rate than what that negotiated in regular increase is. So those are some of the types of subscription models. And I wanted just to mention one other thing, and it's a fundamental reason why the city hasn't participated in the past. And that is when a developer submits for entry into Excel's Community Solar Garden Program, they have to offer Excel a value of the renewable energy credits. Excel keeps that value of the renewable energy because they count it toward their renewable portfolio standard that all of us voted on Amendment 37 a long time ago. That value of the credit in the early years was a positive credit. That meant Excel was paying subscribers for the benefit. So you not only got the great rate that would have been offered by the solar garden, but then you got a rebate from Excel as well. In more recent years, those recs have become negative. So when we say negative recs, it's the solar garden developer actually paying Excel for the privilege of building that solar. And our community, previous boards to yours, have said, that's not a value we want to support. It sends the wrong message that we should be paying for the privilege of building solar for the investor-owned utility. So there were several previous proposals that were solicited. We did not solicit. Developers came to the city and said, we'd love to do a garden on Rooney Road on the landfill, and here's our proposal, and they included negative recs, so they were turned down. So we've had discussions with Excel Energy over the past couple of years. We've hired legal assistance to engage Excel in those discussions about negative recs, about the possibility of them accepting what they call non-negative recs, which are zero.
They're zero.
It's kind of zero. So it's not positive, it's not negative, but it's like the value of zero, and they said they would consider, but, they weren't sure if they would actually take those. And they had so many, proposals with negative recs that they probably don't need to take those, so. It is an outstanding question that when we get a partner and they come up with a proposal, what they will, offer, but we've exhausted our other options in doing something with positive recs, something else outside Excel's program. We've looked at a lot of different strategies over the years, and at this point, this is probably our best bet.
The trend is not gonna go back to positive recs.
Sorry?
The trend is not gonna go back to positive recs, like,
You know, only if
overall.
people stop submitting them.
Yeah.
So if you've got, tax and, tax, investors with big tax appetites, and they've got some squishy profit margins that they can still afford to pay for the privilege of doing it because they need that tax credit, then we'll still see it, but.
If we put storage, we can bid into capacity market.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's just do that. We'll
Yeah.
start with the negative recs. Anyway, so I'm sorry, thank you for taking me down the rabbit hole. Maybe the outcome, that's relevant to evaluating the proposals is, it's complicated, right?
Yep.
And that the relationship with the utility is a major part of that complication. And so, let us find someone who thinks.
We
they
come
can
back to the Excel
handle
being
all
an
this.
important.
Who has the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Qualifying.
how many have been successful?
I thought I saw that in here before, but maybe I didn't in a lot of detail. So, I'm still mentally working my way through here too with prices and stuff, but
Have you reached
So,
out?
yeah, should we talk about prices? Why are these $2 a lot?
why not?
Why are they all $2 a lot? That's a lot.
Where do you see that?
I think it's H,
I had to do a little mental math,
Yeah.
page 5.
but the prices are on page 5,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it'll be like phase 1, and that's 2 or 3, isn't it? Phase 1 of north side is 2 or 3
Yeah,
megawatts.
which is-
Not 6.
Well, the Unico one, if you add all the phases up, is actually a lot less than the EnergyLink one. It's just its first phase is more.
Oh, maybe the phases are named differently?
They should be the same.
that would be.
Or did we
bad
name the
practice.
phases?
Yeah, we named the phases. The phases were in the RFP, I think.
Okay,
That
I'm on-
is-
I'm
So
on
with that
Unico.
preliminary pricing, is this, maybe I've
This
missed
is
this.
$2 a lot.
We would be awarding a contract for all 3 phases, or the build phase would be subject to a second proposal round?
Yeah, where's-
After we design the project, would you send it out for another?
It goes to Excel.
So what you're choosing, or what you're recommending to choose, is a partner that's gonna come
Help
up
us
with all of
submit
these.
to
With
Excel.
1, 2, and 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, and.
They're not gonna build it themselves.
Right.
In reality, we're only looking at phase 1 for the first
Yeah.
submittal. Excel Energy has a cap of
So-
10 megawatts.
so-
Why were the 2 of the 4 vendors unable to submit numbers?
We didn't exactly ask for specific pricing, we asked for general pricing. I think we're all kind of anxious to see like what these examples are for subscribers. Everybody, the first thing they wanna know is how much is it gonna cost me to subscribe, how much is it gonna be for the city to subscribe? We can't tell until we do that site design in a professional capacity.
Right.
So the School of Mines feasibility studies were great, but not necessarily accurate to the level that we need. There's interconnection costs, there's site grading costs, there's, we asked for some agrivoltaics. I say that tongue in cheek.
responsive to that?
McKinstry was the one in their narrative that said they're interested in agrivoltaics, I think, and said that they could look into that. I don't know that anybody really has a ton of experience doing it, so.
Is that
it's-
valuable, like a valuable skill, or?
It's something that this board had asked about and said, the sites should have mutual benefits, not just solar, but, preserving and.
Conserving land.
Taking care of the land as stewards and,
Oh, okay.
there might be some co-benefits for, I think, and maybe Jill knows a little bit more about this, but on a smaller scale, whether or not it's, ground cover or vegetation or crops or bees or something that's.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna be crops, because it's not really like good agricultural land, but it could be native plants, it could be pollinators, bees, could be, you put something and you have sheep grazing under it, or, you know, you could
Mhm.
lease it out for sheep grazing or something.
Not cattle.
Not cattle. Well, because you have to build them too tall, you have to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
You're gonna have cows underneath it, because then they have to be really tall, so they don't knock them over,
Right.
so,
Ducks, you can also raise ducks.
yeah. We could put a bunch of Canada geese under when they keep the trim.
There you go.
They'd fertilize at the same time.
I vote for ducks and sheep, and also it's easy to have pollinators.
Yeah, no goats.
No goats, that's right.
Goats
That's
are bad.
the rule. Well, so my math says it's $2 a watt, and I thought that we were doing better than that at this scale. So I'm a little curious what the
Where they came up with this numbers, yeah.
Or-
Should be closer to $1.
should be closer to $1. I'm also curious why the ones that provided the level of detail, they're all fixed tilt, which is also out of fashion.
They're what?
They're fixed tilt instead of single axis trap system. And
Single
they're-
trap.
They're big enough that I would have thought they could have made single axis trap work. So I don't know, those are technical details that of course we can iron out after choosing part of it. I was wondering if there's an obvious reason for those two observations. Anybody else? Why do these cost twice as much as the unsubsidized benchmark cost?
You know, based on other non-solar bids that I've seen in the past, when you don't define what all of the risk factors are or define the cost of what they are, companies tend to hedge their bets and build in lots of buffer.
Okay,
And I think that's what's going on a little bit here, which is why I kind of put in the memo. Pricing is nice to have, but not to be relied on in this
sure.
case.
I mean, it can cost millions of dollars
Yeah.
to get a fully sharp to the dollar price for a project. So I follow why there's not an exact proposal in here, but I did find it odd that both firms that chose to give a price, gave a price that was double the going rate.
So is it, you know, kind of early stage cost estimate? They say the typical price is $1, so it's plus or minus 100%.
Double check, but I.
And,
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not.
you know, just some design projects, early stages, that's literally what they do. They have really gigantic ranges.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna give you their P50, they're gonna give you their P99.
Right, I guess I'd be a little surprised by that, because yes,
It's a little off-putting to
PV
not have
system
the
is a-
explanation behind it.
every PV system's a little bit different, but not that different. I mean, they
Yeah.
could drive by, they went to the site actually, right?
We had one that came out in the
So they know that it isn't exactly dynamiting bedrock or anything like that,
Yeah.
which is the kind of thing they get you.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know, that's not for us to figure out now, but I wanted to see if it stuck out to anybody else.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Well, certainly when somebody comes in, I'll put their feet to the fire about, what's my extra dollar getting?
Yeah, so I had a question related to that, though. Since we're picking a partner, what are we paying them? Is those costs anywhere in here, or are those not shared?
No, so it's a little variable. What we expect out of a partnership is for them to do preliminary designs at their own costs and to give us a proposal to consider. And that proposal should have a range of options of how the city could participate, from doing nothing. We
Okay.
literally give that project to them.
Okay.
Give up our lease with the state land board, and just kind of facilitate that process. Maybe we're still involved, but we don't spend very much. Another option is we're a subscriber.
Yeah.
As an organization, we don't do much else. A third option is we choose to subscribe and we subsidize
Mhm.
some of the parts of the community that are important. And then the last option is kind of like we lease to own, you know, we eventually buy out the developer from the project. So without knowing what the costs associated with each of those options, but that's what we expect.
Okay,
the
but
partner
we're
to
not
do.
paying them between now and when it gets submitted to Excel?
No.
They're doing that for free?
Correct, and
So if
I-
Excel doesn't pick the project, then we don't owe them anything?
Right, and I may, when we have a partner, there may be some small design costs, there might be some interconnection studies. Our sustainability budget could accommodate paying for those. But this is not $100,000 contract that we're signing just to do design. with them.
Okay.
And if they all tell us that that's what they want, then we'll have a different decision
Yeah,
after this,
okay.
but,
I just want to make sure I understood it, that the cost is not,
yeah,
there's no other cost.
yeah.
Which firm visited the site?
Unico. Yeah, they came out and walked all of them and talked about a little bit their experience north of us. They're out of Longmont. They do the city of Boulder.
Their local
Low
presence,
end of-
Longmont.
So it's almost 8. I wonder if it's possible to make that choice tonight. Isn't that what we're asked to do?
Well, we've got on the agenda till 8:25.
Yeah?
Um,
Are we asked to make a choice tonight, or Teresa's been writing down lots of questions for like follow-up questions? Are we kind of waiting for more information?
I'm gonna watch the video again too, to make sure I got everything. Well, what I heard was if you're looking for more information and you want to hear from references, you might want a field visit with 1 or 2, maybe, I'm not sure if you want more than 2.
I don't know if we need to do 4.
Yeah,
So maybe
No, I
tonight
would
we've got it
definitely
in half.
rule one of these out myself.
I'd feel comfortable with that.
I think if we could narrow it down to 2, that might be.
And then some focused follow-up stuff.
No,
Okay, that's a plan.
no,
Which
I could rule it out to
so
3.
Which one are you ruling out?
I would rule out probably Energy Link,
That's what I was thinking.
Me too.
because they don't have the community solar experience, and to me, that seems really important.
I would suggest that's a good idea, so we're down to 3.
And they all have community solar experience, but what's the second one? Sunshare has a little more.
No, theirs is direct,
That's the
where
whole thing.
McKinstry and Unico are using third parties.
Oh, I was looking at the top row.
Oh, that's the
Solar projects, the
subscription.
top row of
Yeah.
page 4,
Got it, yeah, sorry.
in terms of the megawatts. Colorado Community Solar.
So how significant is it that at least they're not listing collaboration, I got, no, sorry, City of Westminster. Yeah, they've got other references, other projects on par with what we're asking. They might be.
That's a good question.
They might be, there's municipal people in the references.
Yeah, but I had
municipalities in
missed the
references,
Westminster the first time I read through.
But maybe or maybe not just as subscribers, right?
Do we know if there'd be any concern with any of those 3 more than the other, that they would go out of business like you had the problem with the last one?
I think that one's hard to tell.
One of them's been in business.
Unico's have been in business for
5,000 years.
69 years. Well, and they're quite well capitalized if you read their, if they're the ones that had they just got a big investment from a capital investment firm. So I'm not, if I remember right. So I would definitely so if we want to go the other way, I would definitely keep Unico on the list.
Especially because they did the site visit too.
They did the site visit, they're well capitalized. They've done a lot of, I mean, if you look at their references, they've done a lot of work with Excel, they've done community solar.
And I'd suggest Sunshare would also stay on the list,
I do like
as
some.
far as 2. McKinstry
Because they've
has,
done a huge amount of community solar, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly,
Locally too.
locally.
and they're local. Denver headquarters.
Denver, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a headquarters, not
Not
just
a-
an office.
So I'm looking at Unico, they proposed to have the system built by an APC firm called Eco Engineering.
Who's submitted the proposal with them.
The description of Eco Engineering doesn't mention any solar. Mentions LED retrofits, EV charging stations. Oh, it does, sorry, it does say solar panels as part of a list of other things. Certainly not a solar-focused outfit. I have a little bit of pause about that. I can't evaluate as to whether that's a firm that's an inexperienced solar EPC or not, but it would be a shame to be somebody's training wheels project.
So that's like a subcontractor
What
that's
they've
gonna do
got.
the installation.
That's-
Yeah,
I
and
see
they all,
they've
they
got
all do
s-
that.
they got
That's not objectionable in itself.
They
but-
do have solar technology deployment listed on their website.
So maybe it's no big
And
deal.
they're
I
a
mean, they've got
solar
the-
EPC contractor, but it says, we are expanding our presence.
They got 12 megawatts. If they, if all 12 of those megawatts were built by that same EPC, I'd feel a little better about it. But I wouldn't want to be somebody's first.
Right.
Same like with the, we didn't want to be Energy Lake's first community.
So we don't know who did their 104 megawatts
We don't
then,
know who did any of.
if it's
any of that.
eco-engineering or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's a different, so 104 is Sunshare.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep, okay. You're talking about Unico.
I'm talking about Unico's EPC.
Ah, yeah.
So-
So we don't know if they
I don't
did their
that's a
12
deal breaker,
megawatt.
But I have hesitation about
Mhm.
their EPC they chose.
It sounds like something that this group might want is a list of the Colorado projects for at least 2 or 3 firms, and which ones are first-party owned by a municipality or a local government. Is that
I
fair?
think like a similar landscape too.
Mhm.
You know, like I kind of like Arvada or Golden or Boulder because it's kind of like that grassland or like Weld County. Whereas some of them, I don't know. I think well, also for these projects, they're kind of in rural areas where I wouldn't want a portfolio of all these buildings, kind of right.
Mhm.
I agree. If there are multiple choices, pick the one that looks most similar. There might not be
Yeah.
that many choices. I don't know how common this arrangement is. I don't have
I'd
a-
also feel like we should be checking references before we
Mhm.
would make a final commitment.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's that could be an Achilles heel that you just don't.
And when you talk to them,
2
they
years
sometimes give you really good between-the-lines information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference on joining, like being their first person to talk with them on a virtual call? Or would you like me to ask a series of questions to some of these and provide you with their responses?
I want our most solar-y people on that call.
Oh, okay, that's
just
me.
made that word
That's
up.
me and Jill. So we can do that. The
Okay.
first question though, before the meeting is called, is the arrangement anything like what we're proposing? Because if they're merely a customer of an existing community solar setup, I don't think
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's not that interesting
Yeah.
of a
You want to
conversation.
talk to the City of Golden partnership equivalent.
The equivalent of, yeah.
And I
So if
think-
there's anybody left after applying that filter, then yes.
Okay.
If anyone.
I think there's definitely 2 of them. I think
Okay,
the City
great.
of Boulder and the City and County of Denver are those. I'll find out if there's any more. And just work with Tim, you and Jill on
I mean,
a phone call.
I would be happy to sit in just for my education purpose,
Okay,
but I would not schedule around me.
okay.
As long as that doesn't make it a public meeting, and then we have to, if there's 3 of us.
Uh,
Oh, man.
You have to notice that.
Yeah. There's 3 of us, then it's a public meeting.
We'd also have 2 meetings.
Okay.
I noticed you put a minus sign under demonstrate the ability to coordinate with utilities, et cetera. Under Sunshare, I'm curious.
Oh, it's really about energy storage, that one. Is that one? Or, oh, no.
Energy
Yeah, that
storage,
is the
it
energy
is energy
storage one. I
storage, sorry.
decided to
Yeah.
ignore that.
We're ignoring that.
And I think I would pull back and not give everybody the benefit of the doubt that it doesn't exist and that they would still coordinate with the
Yep.
utility. It's probably more based on like how much experience you have with that utility than storage.
And I would assume that they have plenty.
Yeah.
And related to that line of questioning, the question marks in the row above are an important objective, which is the managing subscribers.
Yeah.
What makes them question marks? Is that just that we don't actually know what our objectives are? Or is it
Oh, no,
that
our objectives are pretty clear.
No, I put question marks because I'm not convinced anybody did a great job of responding to that part of the
Okay,
RFP.
okay.
So if you're interested in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 follow-up questions, or
To me, that would
I can.
be one, right? Like, I mean, the whole purpose of this is, serving a certain community.
Okay.
Although I guess we can't completely control it.
So Sunshare's whole thing is community solar,
And managing customer subscriptions.
so I think that they, yeah, I don't know. I think they could do the managing, but consistent with the objectives, okay, so the objectives mention low-income subscribers, right? And I'm not sure I see that mentioned in Sunshare's proposal.
If we look at the guiding principles, it's,
Oh, it does.
you know, yeah, so prioritize the participation of Golden citizens and businesses, provide renewable energy benefits to subscribers, that's a given. Fairly share any financial gain to Golden taxpayers and subscribers, collaborate with stakeholders in the placement of solar arrays, prioritize Golden vendors in bidding and construction, select contractors through a competitive bidding process. And something that has been kind of questioned in the last couple of years is whether or not we need to prioritize long-term ownership by Golden. Not necessarily, but if you would like some of those, I could put those out to the companies you want us to contact and say, specifically answer some of this a little bit more.
Regarding golden ownership, what is the objective there?
If the company goes out of business, we can get a new subcontractor operating. You still have an operator. It's not
When,
the city would operate it.
right, so in 2017, when these guiding principles were established, we didn't have any state landlord lease or knowledge of that. We were looking only within the city. We analyzed about 20 different sites. And I think at the time, when Solar Gardens were kind of in its infancy, 2012 through 2017, there was some collective thought that you could have a nonprofit group run a solar garden, that it might be a kind of an arm of the city that would be a watchdog over the solar garden to make sure it was open to everybody, to make sure that it was for the benefit of the Golden residents. It hasn't manifested that way, really.
But if Excel's not enabling golden priority anyway,
Right.
it becomes almost moot.
Yes, I don't know that there are as many needs or demands that the city would own the system. We're not the recipient of the renewable energy credits. It's simply opportunities and available.
Well, in control.
And control. But the control comes from the people who are designing and constructing the garden as well, too.
But incentives for low income, for example, we can do that by subsidizing, just as easy as owning and subsidizing that way, or lower rates, whatever. So, I'm trying to understand why, what benefits do we gain by having ownership
Yeah.
over not having ownership? I mean, it's,
And like I said, I think it's become less of a priority than it was back then. It is control, but control requires cost, participation. If we're able to create the opportunity, does it matter that the city owns it?
back at supported, it's almost like sale leaseback. Walmart will build their Walmarts, and they'll sell it to a company, and then Walmart leases the building back from that company, because they want it on their income statement, not on their balance sheet.
Is that a concern in the city government?
No, but my point is, it's kind of a sale leaseback, where
Right.
we're creating the project, but eventually it's not really gonna be ours, if we don't want ownership. Kind of, in a way.
I mean, they last a long time, these power plants, and there can be decisions to make partway through the 30 years or so.
But isn't Golden in the business of owning solar gardens?
No.
That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
We want control of one, but we can do that with.
So the same decision must be made about a building, Are there some buildings the city owns and some the city leases?
I think both.
And how's that decision made? In leased space, we probably prefer not to maintain that building, right?
Might be
But
a
we're
sh-
paying someone else to maintain it through the lease.
And probably anyway, even if we own it,
That's just math.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling.
Because we
When I-
do have our own maintenance crews, but.
Yeah. When Excel had the cap of 2 megawatts, you know, and we had put in the capital improvement plan a couple of years out, $4 million. That was a placeholder. I think it's still in the capital improvement plan. But that was during a time when we thought that kind of scale would be reasonable to own. 10 megawatts is probably not. You know, so, I don't know. Creating the opportunity, having residents and businesses have a visible example of this is where their energy is coming from, even if it's not the exact same energy it's in that, and not having it on the eastern slope, not having it in Colorado Springs, and being detached from that whole concept is probably has some value, but whether or not the city has to actually own it is probably not necessary, especially at that 10 megawatt scale. So, the Catamount Drive one, that's probably a very good example of something that we could own. $200,000 cost estimate on that one.
It's probably easier to own it than to manage.
Own it, manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. More feasible. So.
It's a bit of a tangent, we're already 12. So did we want to attempt to get to 2? Process of elimination?
Probably be helpful,
I'm sure.
but it's really hard.
Maybe we have the conversation of what the differentiators would be if we understood them. Maybe we've had that. Like, you know, in here, between the remaining 3, we've decided that, for example, the energy storage issue isn't a differentiator. There's not really apples to apples with costs, and maybe that's a question for presentations on the, relative to the benchmark.
Yep.
I just don't, I'm not seeing information in here, enough information in the summary of the proposals.
We could give each one of these categories a rating of importance, 1 through 10, and we could give each one of the companies a rating for that, and then it's weighted. It's a weighted,
But some of them don't have any
It's a
information on.
non-net negative. What was that, what
Non-negative.
was that phrase?
non-negative.
Yeah, non-negative.
I mean, I think that's valuable to just, that's kind of the decision criteria, right? Like, what are the 5 things that are the most important if we can understand them concretely between these 3 different
And that's where we need. more
proposals, so.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we've probably covered that.
Yeah.
I think being able to hold our nose while they deal with the utility is top of the list. Having experience with a municipality that wants to meddle is also near the top of the list, and that's where the references come in. We can't evaluate that.
I think I'm hearing subscription flexibility or management is one of them.
That's a pretty big.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly the kind of.
Top
Is-
3.
Is a
But do we
kind of-
prioritize those? Do we put a weight on each of those? So out of one, weighting a scale of 1 to 10, experience with municipalities is maybe a 9. Give it a weight and do it more systematically or systematically is the best word.
We can, but we don't have the number to multiply those by, right?
Right, but as a first pass,
Oh, sure.
weight them.
Like, before we have that information.
Before we leave this meeting
Well,
tonight, maybe
uh-huh.
we could weight the things, like I said, on a scale from 1 to 10, what's most important? And then, as Teresa follows up with the additional information, hey, this is very important, she knows how to approach the
Right, okay.
vendors respectively.
So, topic number 1 was Excel experience
Yeah, and why don't I broaden that a little bit to say experience
in Colorado.
in building a PV system and
connecting it to Excel.
Solar
Through a
Garden.
solar garden.
Sure. I've never heard anyone call it that outside of the city, by the way.
Well,
The community solar.
something with, that has subscriptions and it's part of the
Yeah.
Excel program, yeah.
Yeah, so that's community solar experience.
Yeah, okay.
That's both a utility experience and a kind of like
Yes.
construction
Yeah.
kind of experience in dealing with
Okay.
utility.
Next one, that's Excel experience.
Yes.
Mm.
Are we?
Municipality
we're to
experience.
Municipality experience, yeah.
Okay.
I'm struggling to know what, I don't think that's as high a weight to me
That's okay.
as.
Let's
the
just
other
get 'em
one,
down here
Right, so
and,
relatively,
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't mean lacking a lot of experience, at least with a government organization, doesn't necessarily mean they won't do it well.
Agreed.
Is that,
Well, and on the municipal experience, I think what's most important about it is, that gets to the references. Are they good partners to work with cities? Not, they've worked with cities, but boy, that city's never gonna work with them again because they were terrible.
And that's where the reference
but
comes in.
why is that, help me like understand why that's more of an important criteria than they were also terrible to work with for the church they installed solar panels on or something, you know? Is it more terrible to be terrible with the municipality than it is with
Well, I guess
some
it gets
other-
into the hands-on thing.
Okay.
So this might be the same, might be one and the same criterion with, control over the subscriber setup.
That actually might be the same criteria, now that you say
So
it.
what the city wants to do is be a subscriber and influence the distribution of subscriptions, right? Historic buildings, low income, and so on. So just turning over the land and saying, here, just, can you please allow us to sign up, isn't enough.
But that could be also the city of Golden buying the subscription, or partially buying the subscription on behalf of an affordable housing complex.
Is that a thing?
Incentive, well, no, it'd be subsidy.
Yes, there is a component that I didn't mention. Excel's got a list of 5 things that every garden has to have. One of them is 10% of the subscribers have to go to low income. So the developer has already an interest in populating.
10% of the production.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing is, what is the potential for us to direct and influence the subscription makeup and the program for subscribers and the willingness of the developer to allow us to have input?
Yeah. And I'll say that SunShare's proposal says that 50% of their capacity is low-income subscribers. So I guess some firms go above the requirement.
Well, and how do you define low income?
Usually it's eligible for LIHEAP.
Got it. What is that?
Yeah, what's LIHEAP?
Oh, what does LIHEAP stand for, Teresa? Low income, something, something, something.
I'm sorry.
LIHEAP? What does LIHEAP stand for?
I guess that's the
What's,
criteria
you know,
for,
It's an energy, it's a federal energy assistance program.
but is that 80% of AMI?
Let's find out.
We have a couple of those local programs, I forgot the acronyms already. I mean, through the local housing authority, through LEAP, low, LEAP program, I'm not sure.
So LIHEAP is low-income home energy assistance program. And I'm probably not gonna find a single criterion for how it works. But the important thing is that, there are special programs available, including like just from Excel, irrespective of community solar, they're available for LIHEAP. It's like,
Is that more of a
Qualify
federal
for-
program? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Sorry?
Is that more of a federal program? 'Cause I'm
LIHEAP
not-
is a federal program, yes.
I'm not
There is,
aware of it.
I do
Familiar
think
with it.
there are state components of LIHEAP where, I don't know exactly how it's administered, but states get involved in utilities. Deliver the benefit.
So to some degree, fundamentally, already, low income is at least partially covered. It's a question of to what degree do we want to increase?
Yeah, better than 10%,
Or
I
add
would
to it.
say.
And
Well, like what fraction does 10 megawatts need to be to cover all of Golden's low-income residents?
so that project will cover all of the low-income folks in Golden from the get-go.
Yeah.
At least that was the last analysis I took a look at. I mapped out all of the low-income projects that are in the city limits. They wouldn't even come close to exceeding that 10% in a
Whoa,
10
really?
megawatt garden, so.
That'd be 1 megawatt.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, we couldn't meet that. It would have to be.
We couldn't consume that one.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
So you could bump up the threshold though. You could say, okay,
20%.
low income and, 20% more of AMI. You could raise that standard and say households needing higher AMI could be covered as low income. There's lots of other, lots of options, but, because of that size, I think we would be covered with low income. And the reason why we kind of did that analysis is one of the strategies in the past couple of years was that 100% low-income gardens were becoming, had a better chance at getting approval through Excel. So we considered partnering with, I can't remember the, Grid Alternatives is a company that does mostly low-income. And we looked at 100% solar garden and thought, we don't need it. We cover all of Gordon's low-income needs with a regular market rate.
That's
garden.
exciting to hear, actually.
So,
We are at almost our 8:25 marker. We probably want to wrap up as far as next steps.
Can I summarize a little bit?
Perfect.
I heard, talking with references, at least 2 of them that are city-owned. I heard maybe a site visit or 2 from 1 or more of these, if they have something close by. But then what I haven't heard yet maybe is, are you willing to come back together and finish your action in a separate meeting between now and August?
That's the negative about getting more information, is we're not gonna complete that test tonight, but I don't feel comfortable.
I don't have a strong feeling about it. You did mention city ownership. Since you wrote that down, though, you described that we had some awkward silences about what are the benefits of city ownership, and nobody can really come up with one other
But I don't think we have to decide.
Control.
that.
Control. No, but it doesn't need to be a top priority follow-up item anymore to focus on city-owned projects, right? But maybe I would have a preference for a city-initiated or a city-involved project.
It would be
Some distinction from.
Understood.
Good to
Yes,
understand
some
lessons learned
As
from.
opposed to just the city subscribes, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
are they
No
now
longer require
thinking
ownership.
it's a monkey on their back and they
Yeah.
really shouldn't have done it in the first place? Or is it something that's great,
Okay,
or somewhere in between, of course?
okay, gotcha. Understood.
Site visits, references, and city, I guess municipality discussion.
Are we gonna get clarification on the cost, $1 versus $2?
Yeah, I'm interested in that, but,
Maybe.
I think that $1 is like this is like the low end of a utility scale. And so if you sort of between utility scale and commercial ground mount's like $1.70. So it should be closer to more like $1.50, $1.25.
Sure.
But $2 seems on the high end.
Seems a little high, although I don't wanna punish
No,
the firms
'cause
that
we don't know
yet.
chose to put cost numbers,
Right,
not
right.
the ones that just left.
I mean, that's
it
like,
Two being one
I don't
of the
know if-
three
I don't
we
know
left,
much of a
so-
criteria that is.
unless
right
we
now.
can ask the 2 that didn't provide cost numbers, go back and say, hey, can you give us an estimate?
Ballpark.
Well, even
Obviously,
if it's
they've
a
done
range.
something similar to this, right?
X,
They've done-
between X and Y.
Did Unico say why they didn't do Catamount for a price?
It's too small. Too small, they don't wanna have anything to do with it.
Which is fine.
It's almost a residential system.
And that's okay,
It really is.
There is a good chance than not that, one of these developers could advise the city on how to do it ourselves. And then we could put that in the capital improvement budget and spend 200,000 on doing it ourselves. So,
And it could be one of the local developers,
it could be a reasonable, yeah, absolutely,
because it's small enough.
right.
Yeah,
Why did
that could-
EnergyLink put it so high then? Like oh, actually, it's the cheapest, never mind.
That's probably a reasonable price,
Yeah.
234.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How much? How big would it be?
Right.
It's around- oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
10 houses, I guess.
There's some steep slopes involved.
Any other summary items?
No, I think I'm very clear on the criteria that you're asking for. I will immediately kind of look to turn around, two dates, two times that, at least you two, and we'll copy Mark on it, can sit in on a short virtual meeting, maybe, half an hour or something like that, just to be respectful of your time and Denver and Boulder's time. And then, let's see what we have for field trip that we could give to everybody. Don't know what we'll get out of that, but,
It'll be fun.
Oh, yeah, the field trip will be fun.
A bunch of solar panels in a field.
So
Yeah.
what if it's like?
Not that exciting to look at, honestly, but okay.
I wouldn't
Probably
wanna,
with
I
gravel.
wouldn't wanna hold up a vendor, a contractor decision for the field trip though.
okay.
Can we say that?
Field trip is a bigger time commitment than a half-hour follow-up phone call with these
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah, I'll try and set those up separately, maybe toward the end of the day, whoever can come.
Am I the only one who's?
I'm a geologist, I love field trips, but.
Okay. Do you have a narrowed list, or
Of
that you want me to
companies?
reach out to?
I think
have
we've
one
narrowed.
Narrowed to
it
three.
Could you, and I don't even know if this is a good question to ask, but could you ask how many people are in their headquarters? And the reason why I say that is like Sunshare,
Oh.
they have a ton of projects they've done, like 83 other states, 25 Colorado, but they've only been for 11 years in business. So
Okay.
it's like, how many people,
But
like
it's
this
all
other
they do.
company, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's their capacity essentially?
Yeah.
which-
Well, and when they said Golden office, Denver office, the Boulder office, how many people is that? Is it two or?
Because those are gonna be our lines of
McKinstry's office
communication.
is.
McKinstry's pretty big.
Are you thinking more of like how many experts do they have in-house that are dedicated to community solar?
Or like city-wide, because then it's like, they probably have like templates of like how to just plug and chug and go, because they've done this already in the county. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking if there's like Colorado-specific people in these headquarters
Okay,
to like city projects, community solar.
okay.
We're not paying for a bunch of people to travel all over the world.
Yeah, because I was looking at Unico, and they have like all over the country, like their people.
Yeah, you have to look at Unico Solar, because that's different
True. Okay. Yeah, maybe focus on
than
solar.
Unico General.
Okay.
I think before we make a decision that, weighting these criteria is kind of important.
We've got them in order, right?
We've got,
Yeah.
kind of, you got the Excel
But
experience.
To me, that was helpful to have that, without knowing the answers to the individual companies' questions. You're just kind of abstractly setting those criteria. It's a little more of a robust process, I think, than trying to match the person,
Do we end up with
Company
two
one.
criteria in the end?
really only because you compressed the third one.
Ooh, yeah, municipal
That doesn't feel
experience, it's what Excel experience, municipal experience, subscription management, I think is pretty important.
Well, and Sam's really adding a third, which is that really they're staffing for this nature of this project at a local level. They opened a Denver office last week with half of a person,
Oh,
just to
really?
kind of, I don't know, I'm just saying,
Oh,
like,
okay, okay.
that might be feel different than.
Yeah,
having-
definitely.
McKinstry having an actual golden presence is rather interesting.
Yeah.
I think it gives them a little bit better weight.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a plus.
Yeah, we physically know.
But also the experience working with Golden is kind of important as well, so having
But
done
that's
two
tenure of
projects with us
experience, right?
already.
Yeah, they have
I don't know if
those
that's
too.
better value than
This is
similar
interesting,
kind of
but this is
municipal
McKinley, and they
experience.
have Jeff Cook.
Maybe
I
not.
just saw a reference on that. So Todd, are you still pushing for numerical weights on those criteria?
Yeah, I'm
Tends to-
not, I'm thinking we want to probably do something like that so that we're not just kind of flying with,
5 out of 5 utility experience. 3 out of 5
municipality.
Municipal
Three,
experience.
I would say,
Is that low?
I'd say it's closer to 4 out of 5.
I'll accept 4. And the third thing is local staffing.
I'd say there are others.
Can I ask, I heard 4, but maybe 2 of them are the same of what you're talking about. I had experience with Excel, I had experience directly with municipalities, and then I had, potential to direct an influence and willingness of the developer to allow the city to have the input on the subscriber.
I think we combine those two.
Okay,
Well, okay.
Let's work on
Experience
this
with the
stuff.
municipality that wants to meddle with the subscription.
Okay.
process.
Well, then, if those are
Understand.
connected, then
Are they?
maybe that's a 5 out of 5 too.
It was proposed that they be connected, and I'm in support of that proposal, but we could,
I had supported that, but
because I think experience with the municipality, we have to be more specific. I think it's experience with the municipality that wants to lead the process.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna
And
get
if that's
you,
5 out of 5, then they're gonna end up being weighted equally, aren't they?
But then we've got subscriber management, we've got a lot of other things, local
There are
presence,
other-
we've got, the, perhaps having done business with Golden again in the past is something that's worth putting in there. What were the other things that were on this? Bonding capacity, financial partners, references, focus, focus being all the things that are in there. Energy efficiency is in Sunshare's focus, but it's irrelevant, so how many solar projects?
Yeah.
I would say that should be at least a 3 out of 5,
Sure,
if not a
community
4 or
solar
5 out of
experience.
5.
I think we may have already applied that filter, though.
I think that's where the.
No, there's Excel experience, and then there's experience doing solar projects, solar garden projects in particular.
Yeah,
So,
and if all three of the remaining ones have got that, right?
Although Sunshare definitely has the wattage.
a lot more, exactly,
That's their whole deal.
wattage,
I am gonna find out.
mega wattage.
Megawatts.
I'll find out more details for you. I'll get
Okay.
locations and lists and
Yeah.
total.
But your
But
your
is that?
theme is that we have to make a decision, so we need to kind of move, we don't want to prolong
Yeah.
too much information gathering
Right.
before we schedule a meeting to come back and
Yeah,
make a plan.
I'll tell you what I think is reasonable. I can get most of this information and meetings set up by this Friday. Those solar garden developers will give this, they'll turn this,
Yeah.
at least the information
Priority.
portion of this right around pretty quickly. If by Friday we can get a couple of meetings on the books for the municipalities, I'll be looking for site visits next week. So I would suggest that we front load all of this into the next couple of weeks as much as possible, so you
Yeah.
have time.
The reason I mentioned the weighting, by the way, is to kind of create a quantitative way to assess the qualitative variable.
Is it possible to have this supplemental meeting virtual? Okay, because I'm traveling a lot in August.
Yeah, I think this is something that isn't a regular meeting agenda, and it's just focused on that one. I'll talk with our communications department and see if we can set that up
Yeah.
just for that.
That'd be helpful. Because that's a little bit less far.
Also doesn't have to be as long.
Yeah.
All right, did we beat that horse?
Horsepower?
It's still alive. so-
Can we talk a little bit about timing for the virtual meeting?
Yes, yes.
So council is going to get their packet the night of the 18th. We have to back into a memo. I would suggest you be done by the 16th.
At the latest.
At the very, very latest.
August.
Yeah, August. So if possible, finish the week before, maybe,
Yeah.
with some buffer. I'm also out of town, but virtual works.
Yes.
Week of the 8th.
Yeah.
So the week of the 8th is, you're talking about when to do this?
Yeah. If you all have your calendars open and want to set a night, I'll
do it.
I'll set it up.
Thursday is not good. I imagine nobody wants to meet on Friday.
So how about
Monday.
Monday or Wednesday work for me.
Monday's a lot better for me than Wednesday.
Monday's the best for me, honestly.
I'm
Monday
pretty
at
open.
6?
I'm easy that week.
Monday at 6?
Okay.
And we're talking like, and Well, yeah, online,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can change to 6 PM if that doesn't.
Can you send a reminder out in the morning, because Mondays are awful
Yeah.
for me.
I'll send you.
on Monday.
Monday morning, right?
I'll send you a calendar invite tomorrow.
Awesome.
That's
You'd like 6 PM, or does anybody need later, or?
That works.
I'm gonna be eating.
That's.
I haven't had dinner yet, so I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I came straight from work today.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so 6 o'clock on the 8th?
Mhm.
Yep, and I'll send you a calendar invite in the morning.
I'm just putting a hold just in case.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's with the login. All right, so we're over time and agenda topics for the next meeting, August 24th, 2022. Do you already have a list?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, because I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Are we gonna
Apologize, and send it to you.
Reschedule citywide recycling
I
ordinance?
think you should do that. I also think we should have the preliminary conversations about the energy code recommendations. We should look at the outreach, we should plan to look at the roadmap, and you can start to formulate what this board thinks, in advance of a potential joint meeting in early September with planning commission.
Say those again.
Sounds good.
Energy code
Yeah, I
review,
got it. We got recycling, we got
citywide
energy code.
recycling. And,
What was the last one?
I don't know, I should,
You were,
Oh, most of that was just detail under energy code.
oh, it was, got it.
yeah. I would suggest maybe talk about, discuss what's left on the.
Those are
work
big
plan.
topics.
And have the work plan in
Be
front.
enough.
If there's any leftover on the community solar garden, I know that we want to get that nailed down. Anything left over for the fleet and equipment?
I don't think so.
I don't know that we'd have something for you that fast. We should definitely put it on for September though, at least
For the fleet?
an experimental review of.
Yeah, I want,
Oh, yeah.
I want the, 15
The
vehicles.
first few
the
cars
15
to,
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm waiting for my test drive in the F-150.
right.
Right, I'm
These
with you.
race course.
The lightning.
Yeah.
I think maybe you should order a Rivian too, just, to try out.
By
multiple
2025.
options. Yeah. Oh,
know,
they're
we-
delivering them.
And we didn't because of the pricing, so.
Oh, they're much more expensive.
Since they start at 95 and the lightning start at 39.
Oh, yeah.
For the fleet version.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That was an easier one, but it deferred the.
Are they taking orders for the Silverado yet?
I don't know,
The EV Silverado?
yeah.
So we're gonna leave it at those two.
Yes.
Got it.
Let's continue to discuss.
And that's
Oh, yeah, that's. a
all we
person.
have. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second?
I'll second.
Great. Thank you for the good conversation, I think it's really helpful.
Yes, you can order a Silverado.
I was gonna say, Mayor, do you have any feedback?
No, it's really nice
Mayor
to
Weinberg?
be here and listen to how you are deliberating and talking. I try to watch some videos, after the fact online. It's way better to be here.
We're much more fun.
Any